time, haven't we? You know, the West's work, you know, on happy staff make happy patients, you know, but I mean, we know that, and we need to absolutely be putting that in place, I think. Do you know that only 8% of NHS boards have a clinician on them? Apart from the medical, I mean, as a non-exec?
Right. No, another statistic I'd heard was 10% of chief executives are medical background, 30% are nursing background, and the rest are non-clinical.
Yeah.
So I'd heard that statistic, but I hadn't heard this 8% of
the non-execs are clinical, I think. I don't think it's just medical. Clinical.
Oh, right, okay.
But
so actually, and they've got such an important role in terms of board governance.
Yes, and asking the questions. I mean, I chaired the quality committee at the trust, and I find it hard to know how somebody without a clinical background would actually have been able to do that properly.
Well, my colleague now, but my former PhD supervisor, is Professor Naomi Chambers at Manchester.
Oh yes.
And she's done a lot of work on boards.
Yes.
And you know, what is a good board and all of that looks right. So I wonder what her thoughts would be on that.
Yes. But I mean, again, that might be something in terms of, as I say, what happens to people next. That might be something to...
Yeah. So actually that career we were talking about, that career planning, it could well be that there is a place for the expertise that's been built up from clinical leadership roles.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you know, I know that you've got some notes perhaps there around things that you thought might be relevant. So anything to share?
What else did I say? I think we've talked about it all, really. Yes. One personal thing which I'm talking about support. I do think you need support in these roles. As I say, I had coaching and then obviously networking. I also was in a weekly women's group for about 18 years, I think. And for me, that was a major source of support. Of actually, as a senior woman, how do you deal with, those issues of authority and all sorts of things. And other people would talk about all sorts of more personal things. I think I used to talk about work, actually.
So this was a group of women leaders?
No, just local women. I live in Hebden Bridge, and no, they were just women who were committed to, women's solidarity in a way. And we just supported each other in our lives, the story of our lives in a way.
Yeah.
As a huge bit of my life was actually work. So that's maybe an unusual thing, but that was something.
You say that, but actually I've spoken to, I don't know off the top of my head, but I've certainly spoken to men and women in this research so far, and I can at least recall one other woman talking about the role of being a woman in this environment. So it might be that as I talk to more people, it comes up. So I think, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because that's not, as you said, you clarified for me, it's not a specific thing, but it's about offering you support in a particular world. And that world, as we know, is very white and male dominated generally, especially in leadership positions.
Absolutely. Yes. And it was funny because my women, friends, if you like, in the group, they knew my colleagues. They'd never met them. They knew them, because I would, talk about them and, it's sort of strange to think about it now, but I think that was really important actually for me.
Yeah.
That and the coaching, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Well, I think there is interesting if we that some of the research, I've got a colleague who's doing some research on well-being and resilience, and she often will quote to me that the 5 things that make someone more resilient. Of course, there's the organizational, sort of pressures and the extent to which the organization supports you. But on an individual basis, she talks about alongside diet and exercise and good sleep and all those things that make us, perform better, social support being incredibly important. And again, the last 12 months has diminished that slightly, hasn't it? I wonder what it's like. Presumably if you're a current female medical director, you're going into the organization. So maybe you've got colleagues to support you, but I wonder if you haven't got those groups you've talked about.
Yeah, I think that's maybe right. And I think as a female as well, you're somehow, I use the phrase insider outsider actually, because I didn't have friends at work. I had colleagues who I respected and I get along with, but I didn't have friends. I had a different life. I had a different sort of life. They had wives to look after them on the whole. They go off to conferences, their wives would pack their suitcases for them and all that sort of stuff. It's just extraordinary. But, I think in terms of support for, for doing these jobs, if you have a very traditional, spousal relationship, then, men come out of that much better, don't they?
Yeah. Well, and again, it's reflected across broader trends in society, isn't it?
Absolutely.
About, again, highlighted by recent events, but also the work women have done during the pandemic. Everyone's been living at work. I refuse to say working from home.
Yes.
It's living at work. And of course, we know that burden falls much more on women than it does on men.
Absolutely. So, I think those are dimensions there, sort of, underneath all this. Don't hear them talked about very much, but I think they are.
Well, it might be an interesting angle. I'm no expert on gender research. Clearly, try to be aware of the issues, but I've got some colleagues who are, and particularly the role of women in the workplace, and that might be something that's interesting for how do female medical leaders, how are they supported at the workplace, but also by the organisation that exists. I wonder whether that's a question to ask. So thank you. That's really helpful. I don't think there's anything else, Linda.
No, I think I'm all right. I think that's, I just sort of wrote down a few things. I think that's okay. So there you are. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, it was. It's really helpful to hear, because you want to hear from people who don't necessarily, who get recommended. You should talk to that person, they say, because they've done these roles. They know what it's like. And the research is about medical leadership development, and that includes FMLM, but there's a bigger picture here in my research as well. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
No, okay. It's been interesting. Thank you. Okay. Well, I wish you well, and I look forward to seeing any outputs if and when they come.
Yes. Thank you, Linda. Thanks for your time.
Okay then. Cheerio. Bye.
Goodbye.